It seems that loneliness is on the increase today. We might think that, especially with the electronic communication and social media we have, that loneliness might practically be a thing of the past. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I'd like to quote from the website ourworldindata.org from an article entitled Loneliness and Social Connections. Quote, "People are spending more time alone. In the U.S., living alone has nearly doubled over roughly the past 50 years. Young people appear particularly vulnerable. Contemporary surveys consistently find that loneliness tends to be highest in young adulthood rather than old age, contrary to the traditional stereotype of the loneliness as primarily an elderly person problem. But there are indications that some cohorts, particularly Americans in middle age, are experiencing more loneliness than comparable people in earlier generations." End quote. So it's kind of across the board. But we think about that, these aren't just numbers. And we see that now the loneliest person we might know may not be the widow. It might be the 25-year-old that we would probably never suspect. There are many reasons that people might end up in a lonely situation. The loss of a spouse can certainly cause great loneliness. Of course, children grow up and leave home. People might move to a new home where they don't know anyone. Retirement also can tend to isolate people. Sometimes when graduating from school, people scatter, leaving some feeling alone. In addition, things like divorce, chronic illness, or caregiving are also common causes of loneliness. But there's another kind of loneliness. This is the one we can bring on ourselves. Sometimes we might do something that embarrasses us, or we feel funny in public. And rather than to face people, we begin to pull away. We might skip that dinner or stop answering the phone. We might try to tell ourselves that no one really wants us around anyway. Sometimes shame builds up walls, and then loneliness moves in. I suspect pride can play a part in this as well, as it often does. Solomon saw this centuries ago. He knew what happens when a person pulls away on purpose. In fact, in Proverbs 18, verse 1, he tells us, this is the Revised Version, "He that separates himself seeks his own desire and rages against all sound wisdom." And we certainly don't want to separate ourselves on purpose. Rather, we need to avail ourselves of the wisdom of others. I used to think that modern electronic communication, and particularly social media, would do a great job of combating loneliness. That's what I thought. But I now believe that social media is actually making things worse. You know, it takes true friends to really avoid becoming lonely. It takes real friends that we can talk to about anything. Friends that we've come to know. Friends that we can trust. Friends that we can safely confide in. But social media often does not provide that type of intimate relationship. Often we just see the best in people. Maybe they just had a great vacation, or maybe they just got a better job. But often they don't share their concerns, their worries, and their fears. People tend to feel more vulnerable on social media where everybody can see what they post. And this discourages a more intimate relationship. So these relationships tend to be more superficial. The internet has made it possible to be constantly surrounded by other people's lives without necessarily being involved in anyone's life. You know, we could have hundreds of friends on social media and not have a single relationship that's personally fulfilling. The loneliness can cause problems for us. It can contribute to depression and anxiety. And this really surprised me. The National Institute on Aging reports that loneliness was associated with a 31% increased risk of dementia. That was based on 21 studies with over 600,000 participants. Chronic loneliness can increase stress, affect sleep, negatively affect our immune system, even cause inflammation in the body. So Loneliness can affect our physical health as well as our mental health.